Right, welcome. Thank you very, very much for joining us here at this fabulous event. I'm Lauren Laverne, co-founder of The Pool. It's delightful to be here at this Lightbulb Moments event where we are talking to an extraordinary panel of amazing women. To my left, my far left, Jessie Burton, author. Her Lightbulb moment was a novel writing course and an idea for her book, The Miniaturist. I'm absolutely sure you've heard of that. Jessie is the author of the book. She's also an actress. Back in 2011, she was working as a PA and made a spur-of-the-moment decision to take a novel writing course. And the rest, as they say, is history. The Miniaturist is the sensation, the literary sensation of 2014, Waterstone's Book of the Year, Richard and Judy's Book Club pick, Specsavers National Book Awards Book of the Year, and she also won New Writer of the Year at that event, and has absolutely taken the literary world by storm. She's about to release her second book, the follow-up, next year. So Jessie, you began as wanting to be an actress, right?
Yes.
That was the beginning for you.
Yeah.
So what prompted you to take the novel writing course that I mentioned when I was introducing you?
Chronic unemployment as an actress. I think, I was just thinking about this, the whole going on the novel course, that was a lightbulb moment, but there's always these other factors, these stars waiting to align that are way back in your past, I think. And I had... I trained as an actress after going to university, and I'd been working as a jobbing actress, theatres above pubs and understudying at the National and getting gradually there, but just 12 months gaps between work and just finding myself to be very frustrated. I subscribe to the idea that it's good to have illusions and dreams and something to set yourself up against, a tension between where you are and where you'd like to be. I think a lot of us have adversity, and that's what we work with in order to triumph. And so for me it was finding that happiness and that I'd been wanting in that moment after not having it for ages, because I've been trying to become Emma Thompson, which wasn't happening.
So what was your biggest hurdle then, do you think? Was it the early rejections, or was it the kind of, once you actually had to finish it and edit it?
Rejection didn't really bother me that much, partly because I was an actress already, so I was very trained in being rejected. That wasn't the biggest hurdle. I think the biggest hurdle was for me myself to just keep going and to believe I could do it, because there's nothing worse than your inner critic and thinking, I'm not very good, this is rubbish. Sometimes it's useful to have that, because that does actually make you write better, and I wouldn't want to be super arrogant and going, oh my God, this is so wonderful, darling, I don't need to edit this. But I think that was the biggest hurdle, was sort of believing that I could do it. But I always felt that there was perhaps more possibility with writing than with acting, because I think there are fewer people willing to stick to the end of what it takes to write a novel than perhaps there are actors out there.
To my far right, we have Karyn McCluskey. Karyn is the director of the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit, and her lightbulb moment was making violence a public health issue in Scotland and co-founding the aforementioned unit. She is a leading light in police intelligence, trained as a nurse, joined the police 20 years ago, and her revelation that violence was a public health issue has helped to cut the murder rate over the course of 10 years by more than half. More than half. Incredible. Karyn McCluskey, so you are the director of the Scottish Violence Reduction Unit.
I am.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I get that right, because it's a bit of a mouthful, and something that you set up. So your lightbulb moment, I guess, came 10 years ago when you founded that.
Yeah, it was. So I'd gone to Strathclyde Police, and I had been in West Mercia, for those of you who don't know, as Worcester, and it was bloody lovely. We'd had about 3 murders in 3 years, and I was the only Scot, and so their favourite thing was to make me call up and say, call Chief Inspector Taggart, there's been a murder. It took me ages to work out that I was getting picked on for being Scottish. And then I went to Scotland, and I'd been away from Scotland for about 18 years, and when I went back, I was absolutely overwhelmed. I mean, we had murders every week. We had 5 murders in a weekend. We had just a litany of women who were losing their life and young men who were losing their life, and nobody seemed to care. and we had a 16-year-old boy who'd been stabbed, and he was in the gutter, and and the 74-year-old woman, and she'd come out and she cuddled him whilst pretty much he died, and he died crying for his mum, saying, "Don't let me die, don't let me die," and he did, he bled to death. And I thought, this is it, and it was in all the papers, and I thought this was a Rosa Parks moment when people would stand up and say, you know something, we've had enough, and nothing happened.
Of reclassifying violence as a public health issue. What does that mean, and what was the attitude at the time when you first introduced that idea?
Well, I mean, I'd had a health background. I mean, I'd also trained as a forensic psychologist, so I was comfortable in health. And it's when you look at, I mean, violence does spread like an infection. I mean, if you look at epidemiology, you know, you get elements of contagion. Think of the riots. You know, it passes on. If you're a deprived young man in a very, you know, in an area that's stricken by poverty, you will go out and you'll meet other people just like you, and then you get clustering. You know, so it does absolutely operate like a disease. And the thing is, if you think about it just like a police problem, you will wait until an offence happens, and they will have to investigate it, and then somebody will get caught. That doesn't take in prevention. And frankly, I never want to meet another murder victim's family. I know too many of them. I would rather prevent it in the first place, and that's what I really wanted to start to do. And people think it's quite fluffy, and you're right, it's big. You know, the first person I went to see someone really senior in the prison service, and I said to him, I want to do violence reduction, and he said, it's too big, don't bother, and he gave me a cup of tea and a biscuit, and I never went back to see him. You know, because I decided then you only get 3 choices. You can lead, or you can follow, or you can get out of the way. And that's the only choices you had. It's no short term. I've stayed and done my job for 11 years. I've been offered jobs all over the world. But I committed way back then to saying I would change this. And that's long term. And the problem is everybody moves jobs every 3 or 4 years. I mean, you'll never achieve anything great if you do that. And so I'm not interested in short-termism. If you think this is just an operation, you're kidding yourself.
What is the compass point? What's the aim?
Well, I can shut my eyes, and I still think that I can see women growing up without ever being affected by domestic abuse. That even if you're born in a poor area, your chances of achieving something and moving out of that are just as good as anybody else. Yeah, you're right, we are not going to solve all. I'm the violence reduction unit, not the violence eradication unit, because I can't stop everything. I'm not on every street. But you can make it, I want to make it better and not worse. And at the moment, I know Scotland's safer. You know, I know our kids are safer. I advocate hugely for excess spending in early years now. If I had the government cake, I'd spend it on our kids.
Just next to me, to my right, Anne-Marie Maffedon, campaigner and actual child genius, I'm told. BITD. And she set up the STEMettes, which you might have heard of. That is encouraging more girls and young women to take roles in STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths. Thank you very much for being here. And your light bulb moment was setting up the STEMettes. Tell me about the STEMettes.
Yeah, so we were talking about this earlier, actually. It was a series of light bulb moments. So I've always really loved technology. I've also always been a girl. And so I didn't realise until maybe 3 years ago that this might be a weird thing. So I was at a conference in the States, so I actually have a job as a technologist. I was in a conference in the States talking about what I do, and heard there kind of met loads of other women in computing, so realised, you know, oh my God, I'm a woman in technology. But also heard the stats and heard that, you know, like I said, over the last 30 years, at least in the States, the numbers of women in this industry has been in freefall. And I thought that's really weird. I've always loved technology, never really thought I was that much of a weirdo. Okay. When I have children, I don't want them to be ashamed that their mum is a technologist and is part of a dying breed. But also if I have a daughter, she's going to be 50% me, and there's a likelihood that she might become one of these weirdos who's a woman in technology. So I felt like I had to do something for my unborn daughter. So initially, it was a volunteering organisation. So like I said, I had a job that I really, really, really enjoyed. And that was why I felt this impetus that I kind of needed to have more girls involved. So it was more of a punt, really. I blogged about it for a couple of months, so from kind of the conference up until New Year's, and then released it as my New Year's goal or aim that I was going to try this out. I was going to see, you know, whether I get loads of food and loads of cool women into a room, whether girls will come along to come and meet them and maybe hopefully be inspired. And we did our first, so we launched on Pancake Day 2013, had pancakes on tap, which I think helped to fill the room. Had loads of women as well in industry, and got the girls to kind of to meet them and just talk to them and see that actually they're normal people who also eat chocolate or pancakes.
Because you have the most incredible CV. I mean, going right the way back to seriously being a child genius when you were a little girl, and then I think you passed your maths and computer science GCSE when you were 10. You hold the world record for the youngest girl to pass A-level computing. How old were you when that happened? 11, the year after. And fast forward a few years, and you are in the Guardian's top 10 women in tech you need to know, one of the youngest ever women to be awarded a master's degree from Oxford in maths and computer science at 20. While all this was happening, was there no clue that you were a bit unusual at any point?
Well, there's no such thing as normal. I think for me though, I mean, I was unusual, but also, I liked McDonald's as a kid, and I don't know, I ate ice lollies and learnt to ride a bike and all the rest of it. So it wasn't really, I guess for me, that was my life, but it's weird looking back, I never really realised that I was the only girl even in those scenarios. So it's funny, right? Child genius, but not very perceptive. So for me...
who together form TATTY DEVINE, the jewellery brand, which I'm sure, yes, exactly, you know already. Rosie Wolfenden and Harriet Vine, who apparently your light bulb moment was finding a bin bag of leather and deciding to make the offcuts into something wearable. Excellent. That is a short bio, but sufficient to say that was a while back, and they've gone from strength to strength since. So, two incredibly talented jewellery designers. As we said, your light bulb moment was finding this bin bag full of leather offcuts. Where was it? When did this event happen?
It was after the pub, or coming back from the pub one night on the Finchley Road outside a shop called Roche Bobois.
Ooh.
Very snazzy.
That's a very posh interiors shop,
Very
isn't
posh.
it?
They must have thrown every sample book away they had. There was literally 18 bin bags full of sample books. And
what drew you to the bin bags in the first place?
I'm always drawn to bin bags.
We were art students and just compelled to dive into skips or go through rubbish.
So this was already habitual.
Finding treasure thing, it's like we had been given leaflets at college about not contracting diseases out of skips. What to do if you did, or what it might be like if you started to get a disease, because literally everybody was down skips all the time.
It's free stuff. We just love free stuff.
How long did it take for the business to actually be a business, to be a kind of functional
a long
business?
time. I mean, it was 16 years ago when we found that leather. We took it to a market stall. We did Camden on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and then we went to Portobello. And I mean, we didn't really even have a name at first. It was brilliant. We'd make like £100, and we'd be like, brilliant, that's the rent for 2 weeks, whatever. But quite quickly, shops would come along and say, oh, can we buy this for our shop, like Urban Outfitters, a really cool shop from Berlin. And that got us thinking, oh, we should start approaching shops with this, we should start selling this, this is actually something people are interested in.
I think it was the uniqueness of stuff from the rest of the world coming through the sort of filter of Rosie and I, and the conversations we'd have and the fascinations we'd develop about things that made what we did kind of special. And I think that's what's different about what we do. I think it's a kind of sincerity and the kind of obsessiveness that gives the aesthetic.
There's like a real desire to be different, and we always wanted to make stuff that didn't exist, and that was our genuine kind of raison d'etre. It was, we need stuff that you can't buy because we don't want to be like anybody else, and I think that's kind of motivated the originality at the heart of the work, really.
But also that's just a lot more fashionable now.
Yeah.
So it's much more fashionable to be original and different. It's like when we first started, lots of the jewellery we made was on Bubble from Absolutely Fabulous as an example. It's like she was like out there and she was wearing all this TATTY DEVINE stuff because she was mental. And then when they go to film the new series of that, it was really difficult to to dress her because she kind of looks like everybody else now.
A huge thank you to you guys for coming here. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you so very much. Thank you to Clinique for helping us create this event, but most of all, thank you to our wonderful panel. We couldn't have asked for better. I feel thoroughly inspired. I hope you guys do too. Thank you very much, Jessie Burton, Karyn McCluskey, Anne-Marie Maffedon, Rosie Wolfenden, and Harriet Vine. You've all been absolutely amazing. Thank you for being here.